don't get caught up in fear. Don't lose hope. Remember to like tune that sort of stuff out. And I know it's hard. I've lost friends. I've lost family. This is not easy, but you do have a choice. Choose to make use of this time. It's back to like, when you get served a lemon, you make lemonade. Yes, this is a lemon. This is an absolute lemon, but you do have a choice in terms of how you respond. And that is your responsibility to yourself. To disrupt is to question the status quo and to believe that you can do things better. I came down here kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and, thought that, oh, this will be really easy and some amazing things will happen. I've learned a lot, along the way, and I think some good things are coming from it. But, these things take time, to measure.
What's up, Disrupt Nation? My name is Tony Delgado, and my guest today is the infamous Brock Pierce. Brock, thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I was telling our audience off the air a little bit about how we first met. I met you first when I moved to Puerto Rico, and you started this movement in Puerto Rico called Restart Week. I started this movement in Puerto Rico called Disrupt, and our events were like back to back, and you were so gracious. We collaborated with you on that first event, and you've been welcoming. And it has been a pleasure to meet you every interaction with you. You've been a disruptive thinker and always thinking outside of the box, always pushing the limits of what's possible. And that's why I'm super, super excited to have you on the show and start this conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I believe, teamwork is what makes this collective dream work. And so, the more the merrier. And so, yeah, really, really happy about that event series that we put together, specifically the one that was a little over 2 years ago in March following Hurricane Maria. We didn't do that much. I basically just picked up the phone and called friend after friend after friend. And I said, do an event, do an event, do an event. And so in a very decentralized, distributed fashion, you had all these different groups doing things from a major concert with Busta Rhymes and Akon and all of these amazing artists at the Coliseum here in Puerto Rico that put on a free concert for everyone in Puerto Rico that wanted to attend. That combined with a bunch of major conferences, a bunch of mini events, all sorts of stuff. I mean, I think there were over 3,000 people that flew in, sold out every hotel from, Old San Juan to Isla Verde, every flight into the city. And it still may have been the first time that that's happened since Hurricane Maria. I'm not sure there's been another event where basically all of San Juan was sold out. It felt like, South by Southwest here. We're going to have to, maybe we should plan another, series of events similar. It's been a couple of years. So I think that there's a possibility we could pull that band back together again to do something massive.
Absolutely. And that's like compassionate capitalism. It's philanthropic capitalism. Like, I'm sure those events made money, but it's like, hey, how can we make a big impact, do something freaking awesome, and also have a positive impact on the economy at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think definitely something could happen. And now might be the right time to start planning that for next March. So basically for our 3rd year anniversary. And that gives us, 11 months to plan it. And that's, giving people time, is always a good thing.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Things that can be done well.
For sure. So let's talk about Puerto Rico. Let's start the conversation there. Why did you move to Puerto Rico? And I think you are a very polarizing figure. Everything that I do with you, it always goes viral in good ways and bad. Why did you move to Puerto Rico? I'll leave it super simple.
Well, I started coming down here as a teenager. And so I've, kind of always been in love with the island. Most people just are not familiar with Puerto Rico. Most people confuse it with Costa Rica. They don't know it's part of the United States. I mean, geography is an issue that most, not just Americans, but people in general suffer from. Maybe Europeans are some of the few members of society that kind of have their geography down, and probably has something to do with just living in Europe in general. And so I was already familiar with kind of this amazing place, its natural beauty, the wonder of the Puerto Rican people in this place. But it wasn't really until 2013 and 14 that Puerto Rico was back on my radar. And that was because I needed to start a bank, or I needed to buy a bank to be able to bank some of the early crypto companies, Bitcoin companies specifically, because all of these US businesses were unable to get US banking. Only Silicon Valley Bank banked the three leading companies, and that was it. Everybody else was struggling to get banking in a way that was compliant. And so I looked at buying banks, I looked at starting banks, and what I figured out is it was going to take a very long time and be very expensive. And eventually it dawned on me that, maybe there's an easier way to do this through Guam, Samoa, the US Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, these US territories. And I talked to this guy, Rob Brill, and he explained to me that, yes, there's a way to do that, but no one has done it yet. So I jumped on a plane, came down here, and it ended up starting the first crypto bank here in 2014 called Noble Bank. The CEO that ran that business kind of ran it off a cliff, but what it did was it reintroduced me to Puerto Rico. And now that I was a little bit older, I started to understand some of the specific nuances of the US territories and what that enabled you to do. Fast forward to a few years later, I started, people were traveling anywhere in the world I went. And so I started recognizing that people would go wherever I went. And then that eventually led to a series of experiments that led to me moving it to Spain and finding out that people would come there whenever I wanted. And I was like, well, wow, if people are willing to follow me anywhere, I should probably go somewhere that would benefit from that. Living in New York or London or Hong Kong or Tokyo, wasn't making the world a better place. And so I said, well, Puerto Rico's the spot. I think lots of people would potentially follow me there. And so I started telling my friends, and then fast forward to Hurricane Maria. I wasn't quite ready, but that was the moment where I said, well, if I'm going to run this social experiment to see if people will follow me somewhere, it's not the most convenient time, but now is the time. And so I moved to Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria, and I've been down here ever since. And I'd say the experiment is still early or in its infancy, but I'd say it's working. I'd say that a fairly large number of people have moved down here as a result of this, sort of movement that I've helped further, and I think some good things are coming from it. But these things take time, to measure. For myself included, I came down here kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and thought that, oh, this will be really easy and some amazing things will happen. I've learned a lot, along the way, and definitely experienced some challenges, but I think it's working. I think that a bunch of great things are happening. Investing in businesses on the island, helping to support things that are essentially broken and giving them a second wind or a fresh start or a new life. And then doing a lot of work, from a philanthropic perspective. And that's not just me. It's had a ripple effect in the sense that lots of other people are doing the same. And, I'm a bit of a bully when it comes to people that move down here. If you moved down here recently, I'm the first person to ask you, so what are you doing to help the island? How are you helping people? Are you giving money to charity? Are you investing in businesses? And so if you're not doing anything to give back, I'm one of those figures that'll make you feel very uncomfortable. And if you don't, and if you haven't done something, that's okay. But once you've had that conversation with me, and the next time you see me, I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to remind you of all the things that you said. And so if you haven't actually followed through on anything, then it becomes a really uncomfortable thing. And then, some people will go far out of their way to avoid me. and that doesn't mean give money to charity, right? That's one of the many things you can do to give back. You can buy dilapidated buildings and fix them up, right? That's benefiting the island. You can invest in businesses. You can go do public speaking or go teach a course at the university. There's many ways that you can give back. There's many ways that you can support Puerto Rico. And, I don't tell people what to do or how to do it. I just ask them, what are they doing, and help them along, refine that thinking so that they can, do more.
Definitely. Yeah. And I definitely think there's a domino effect that, like you said, it takes a lot of time to realize, oh, wow, that guy that moved down here because of the first restart week or the first disruptive event, he moved down here and now 3 years later, he started a nonprofit. 3 years later, he bought that building and renovated it. 3 years later, he spoke at that college, and a kid got an internship because of it. All these kind of, like you said, ripple effects, domino effects, that you don't see, and you might not even realize. Like I'm sure there's tons of things that you've done that you don't even know. Oh wow, that person actually came down here because of a blockchain event or something of that nature, and now these opportunities got created. Same thing at these disrupt events. I had people who came to the last one and they're like, oh yeah, I live here now. I came to the first one and now I live here. It's like, really? Oh wow, welcome. I didn't know you've been here for the last 2 years or whatever. And again, it doesn't have to be charity. There is such a thing as compassionate capitalism. So you want to talk a little bit more about that? Like, how can people, without being a total philanthropist, how are some ways that maybe capitalism can be socially conscious?
Yeah, so I call myself a conscious capitalist. And, at a very basic level, it's not doing things because you can, or just because it makes money, for example. So you're doing things because you should. And the way you know whether you should be doing something is because you've asked the question, why? And you've actually taken the time to think through, what are the implications of this? If I do blank, what are the cascading events that will come from that? And choosing to do things, having thought through that. And so my why, I don't do things because it makes money, though clearly you need things to be sustainable if you want to, be able to keep on doing things. And that's one of the problems that charity has in general. And I don't like to use the term that charity is broken, but there's, a lot of room for improvement. And where consciousness meets capitalism, or impact meets capitalism, where it's social impact, focused, but built in a very sustainable way, great things come from that. And so you really just, because it's a universal thing, you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and start thinking about, is this helping people or hurting people? My definition of what's good or what's evil is, does this help people or hurt people? If you're doing things that cause harm, to me, that's kind of evil. If you're doing things that, help people or assist humanity as a whole, that's good. And that's a pretty basic things, right or wrong. I mean, how do you define these things? And so I think through that stuff, obviously, that's very definitional, in my opinion, like selling sugar products is, harming people, but not in a major way, right? There are certain things that are really harming the world, versus, so you have to really ask that for yourself, and to each their own sort of thing. And so that's how I would recommend people think through these issues, is just really thinking through, what is the impact that it's having, which is a good thing just in general, right? What is your legacy? So I measure my success in life by the positive impact I have. I don't measure success by the amount of money I make or the money I have. And so I view life as a game of sorts. And so if you start to think of this as the game of life, how are you going to measure your success? What are the key performance indicators or KPIs that you use to measure your success? And it's, far too common, because we live in a world with the Forbes 400 that, it's all this aspirational sort of wealth related stuff. Eventually, once you've made it and you have some money, you start to realize that, okay, now, what next? Then what? If you're so fortunate. And what you'll learn is that money doesn't make you happy, right? And really start to focus on those things. And, I like to use this Japanese term, and I use that to tip my hat to Satoshi in some ways. And you can look this up. It's called Ikigai, or Ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept where I think it can help you find your life purpose. And to boil it down, it's figuring out what you're good at, number one, right? What you love, or what you're passionate about, right? That's number two. And what the world needs. That's number three. There's a fourth thing which says what you can get paid for, but I think you can just generally disregard that. So if you figure out what you're good at, what you love, and what the world needs, the intersection of that Venn diagram basically will show you what your life's purpose is. And it doesn't matter if you get paid well. If you're doing what you love and what you're good at, and you're helping others, you're going to feel great. You're going to love it. And you're going to work so hard that you're most likely going to become really, really good at that thing. You're going to become a master. And if you become a master of anything, you normally will do well. And it doesn't matter if you're making a bunch of money anyway, because you're so happy, you're probably going to have all that you need. And so these are just kind of like some basic philosophical things of, finding your life's purpose, chasing money often leads to making a bunch of sort of compromises where you're like doing something that you don't necessarily love because you think it's going to get you paid well. And you eventually just make all these personal moral compromises that eventually leads to real misery. And you eventually like get to that point, oh, I made the $1 million I've always dreamed of. And by the time you get there, you're like, but I sold my soul. So just stuff I recommend, generally everybody think about.
Yeah, yeah. I've made $1 million, but I'm trapped in this business that I hate, right? Or I'm trapped in this world that I've created that I'm not fulfilled with. A lot of times people they increase their income, but they simultaneously increase their expenses. So they'll buy a fancy car, fancy camera, and they'll have this big mortgage, and then they become a prisoner of their luxury. And it's like, oh, well, I don't like this business anymore, but I can't stop it because my life is dependent on it. My lifestyle has now been dependent on it. And honestly, there's almost a fallback to minimalism, especially with this quarantine, with people are kind of focusing on, no, I need more basic things in life. I don't necessarily need to be out going to all these different crazy restaurants I need to be at home with my wife and my kids and the things that are important in life. What advice do you have to people in these crazy times of quarantine? I think people are under a lot of stress, whether that stress is real or being created by the media. What advice do you have for people right now that are locked down and feeling hopeless?
Yeah, so the stress is real, and to varying degrees, depending upon your circumstances. The question is really, what do you do under, in these circumstances? What choice do you make? And you really, if you boil it all down to its most simplistic form, is you have two choices. One is fear, one is love. Choose love. Behind the curtain of love, behind door number 2 is hope and all of these sort of beautiful things. And so what I encourage people to do is view this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity to take a look at your life and start to do all the things that you've been putting off because you've just been too busy in the rat race, doing whatever you had to do. This is an opportunity to step back, analyze your life, reflect, get your house in order. And I don't mean that just like figuratively. I also mean it literally, like organize your house, but really organize your life. This is a chance to reset. This is a chance to restart and to, start to build that life that you ultimately dream of. I mean, for me, I did a 7-day water fast. A lot of people are gaining weight right now because they're binge eating. Instead, what did I do during this time? I don't have temptation, that I usually do. And as I'm running around and doing my social life, this was a perfect time to do a hardcore water fast. I'm in a keto diet right now where I'm not eating more than 20 net grams of carbohydrates. You take your carbs minus your fiber, which changes your body from running on sugar to running on fat. And so I'm becoming much healthier, as a result of this. I'm reading the books that I've been meaning to read for a while. I'm participating in more of, these podcasts and social media. I should have my green screen up. I just moved it and I have another one here so I could have a really cool background. But, taking a moment to do all these things that normally you don't ever get a chance to do. This is an opportunity. So when this is all said and done, you come out of it better for it. You may have less money. You may even have less friends and family. There's some really difficult things that can happen through this, but that doesn't mean you can't be better for it. This is an opportunity to prepare yourself and to go into deep training so that when this is over, you are ready to rock, ready to take on whatever challenge it is that, the world presents to you. And so don't get caught up in fear. Don't lose hope. Remember to tune that sort of stuff out. And I know it's hard. I've lost friends. I've lost family. This is not easy, but you do have a choice. Choose to make use of this time. It's back to when you get served a lemon, you make lemonade. Yes, this is a lemon. This is an absolute lemon, but you do have a choice in terms of how you respond. And that is your responsibility to yourself.
Definitely. I love that. Someone in the comments said that Ramadan starts in a couple of days and it's similar, it's a fast. It's a intentional once a year. We're going to be grateful and we're going to give praise to the creator and we're going to take a break and kind of hit the pause button. And I feel like we live in a society where religion has definitely been put on the back burner, especially in the West. You know, spirituality and religion is definitely, for a big percentage of the population, has been an afterthought. So this is giving some people that may not have had a fast or a Ramadan or something like that, it's giving everyone a pause and a break. And like you said, take it as an opportunity to reflect on your spirituality. Let's go into that. I know you personally, you're a very spiritual person. What are your spiritual beliefs, and how can people use spirituality in this time?
Yeah, I consider myself a very spiritual person. I identify as a Christian just because of my sort of family line, right? I come from a Christian family, therefore that's the religion I most identify with. But I believe in, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe to each their own, whatever your practice. I will probably observe all of Ramadan, not because I consider myself Muslim, but I believe that all the religions have something great to teach us and to learn from all. I study all religions, and to some degree, I consider myself of all religions, right? I'm not, I believe, in the same way that I consider myself blockchain agnostic or, chain agnostic. I don't subscribe to my chain is better than your chain, or my coin's better than your coin, or my religion is better than your religion. Whatever works for you. And I believe that all of these things have the potential to make us better or to make the world a better place. And if anyone succeeds in making the world a better place, we all win. So whatever works for you is good, and so I think that this is, a great time to certainly to reflect on what you believe. This is one of those things right now. If you don't know what you believe, it's a good time to really ask yourself that, because that's kind of the foundation of who you are. A lot of people, if I ask them what are their superpowers or what do they believe, they don't really know. They don't even know. Know thyself is kind of a key thing. And if you don't, have a strong foundation of who you are, it's very hard to build, that best version of yourself that is going to do, the greatest work, with the time that you've been given in this life. And so to reflect on your beliefs is something I highly encourage people to do, to really, kind of question themselves and to dive into that, because that is largely the foundation of who you are. And so, I consider myself a very, sort of spiritual person, try to meditate every day. I have, a spiritual practice that, I'm devoting more time and energy to during this time. And that's another thing that I recommend everybody do, whether it be meditation, whether it be yoga, whatever it is that, you want to do. This is an opportunity to do all of those things, which I'm guilty of not doing to the degree that I would like to, because I just get busy. There's too many things on the calendar, too many, on a plane, and I just don't get into that routine. This is an opportunity to really build that routine, put it into practice, and then try to maintain it when, hopefully the world goes back to something that is not normal. I don't want to go back to normal. I want to go back to, I want when this is over that we go to a better world, that we've taken the time to upgrade ourselves. I don't want normal. Normal was, the normal state of the world was not a state of the world that provides us with what I consider to be a future. I don't think the path that humanity was on was a good path. I think that we were destroying the world. We need to focus on our resiliency, to focus on sustainability, and ultimately to focus on regeneration. And we don't have the power to change anyone but ourselves. And so, if we want to build a better world, it requires each and everyone, being a better self, right? It's, what do you see when you look in the mirror?
How can young people make an impact on the world? I feel like young people, my generation younger than me, we are very impact driven, but a lot of times we have a lot of ambition and we don't know where to channel it. How can young people make a big impact on the world?
Well, I mean, the young people are the future of everything. So, I mean, that's ultimately the main thing that we're here to do is to prepare the next generation, leave the world in a state where the next generation can hopefully pick up where we left off and hopefully improve on all the things that we've done. And so hopefully there is a future for the next generation, right? And that's why it's so important that we make good decisions with the time that we have. And so the youth is everything. And so one of the things I'd recommend with, ambition is there's a great video. You can go online and there's a video on like how to create a movement. You look up YouTube dancing guy, how to start a movement like dancing guy. Look that up on YouTube and you'll see something. There's a really important video there that I recommend everybody watches, and it will be very entertaining. But what it really focuses on is how, most movements start with kind of a crazy person, with a crazy idea. And what really makes that crazy person succeed is not because of them and their idea. It's the first follower. It's the first person that recognizes the beauty of what that person is doing and takes the risk to basically validate that person, that idea. And then the second follower. And those early followers are actually just as important as the leader themselves. And so I think, one of the valuable lessons there is if you don't know where to channel it, it doesn't need to be your idea. Remember, teamwork makes this collective dream work. And so if you're not sure what that thing is, go find someone that's doing something that you find truly inspiring and figure out how to help them with what they're doing. That's how we make real change in the world, is by focusing our energy on the things that we care about and we think that are going to matter. And it doesn't have to be your idea. Too often I think we're busy seeking credit. It's this concept of not invented here, right? I don't care where the idea comes from. It doesn't need to be mine. Let's just support amazing things with the time that we've been given.
So if people, they're not sure what their idea is, look for visionaries, look for movements that you can join and help be a catalyst to move them forward. What about the opposite? What about the person that, they have an idea, they have a movement, and they're looking to build the right team around them? Maybe they have a project, whether it's a company that's for-profit or a nonprofit movement. So they have a company, but they're like, how do I bring the right team around me? How do I surround myself with the right people to win? How do you choose the winners in your circle?
Well, there's two parts of it. First and foremost is, sing, your idea, or yell your idea from the tops of the mountains. The most important, a lot of times when people have an idea, is their first reaction is fear that someone's going to steal it from them. And yes, there are, stories of these sorts of things happening, but if you don't make people aware of your idea, it's never going to come true, right? So you're better off, running the risk of someone picking up your idea and running with it, and then just saying, hey, great, somebody else fulfilled my dream, which is also not a bad thing. I know that, we want to own and control everything, but, the first thing is people have to be aware of what you're doing. And so you have to be talking about it all the time, telling people about it all the time. And then that conversation may lead to someone saying, hey, yeah, I'd love to help you with that. Or that conversation may lead, I know this person so-and-so that would love to help you with that. And so that's just kind of opening up the floodgate, right, for, people to present themselves as people that may want to join you in your mission, right? Then from there, then you have to learn how to exercise discernment, right? Choosing people, the people that you partner up with on these projects, to some degree, they're like marriages. So you have to make very good decisions. You don't propose on a first date kind of thing, right? And so, spend time, choose your partners wisely. And, slow to hire, sort of fast to fire is probably a reasonably good strategy. So be very thoughtful in who you pick, be discerning. And if you then see, problems or early signs that that relationship's not going to work for whatever reason, end it quickly, because all it takes is one bad apple in the mix early on to essentially sour everything and cause a project to fail. Early stage endeavors, whatever they are typically super, super fragile. And there's a million ways that they can fail. And it's almost a miracle every time it succeeds. Hey, but yes, again, remember, the only way it happens is with a band and a team, right? I've never seen anyone succeed in building anything by themselves. There might be some weird examples of that, but in general, it requires teamwork to make that dream work.
I love that. So start a band.
That's essentially what it is. Or it's like, it's like a recipe. It's like cooking, right? It's like making a soup. You know, what are the different ingredients that you need to make that thing work? And also, it often means finding people that are very different from you. You don't need 3, 4, or 5 people with identical skill sets. You basically need complementary skill sets, which also makes it hard to be discerning because, you know, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it's easy to evaluate hammers, but, you know, it's hard to evaluate screwdrivers and, you know, wrenches and everything else. And so as you're, you know, trying to figure out what are all the different tools that are needed to do whatever it is that you're attempting to do to fulfill whatever mission you're on, you know, you really have to think about what are the things that you're going to need, like a band or like making a soup. You know, what are the different spices? What are the different ingredients that you're going to need? You know, what are the different instruments? You might be a good lead singer, but you're going to need a guitarist and a drummer and a bassist.
So I want to switch over to the economy. We just spoke with John McAfee, and he advised us to invest in guns and ammunition as the safest place to put your assets. I'm hoping you have a slightly more optimistic view on the world. Where should people be putting their money? The Fed is printing trillions of dollars. The one thing that John McAfee said that I definitely agree on is that the dollar is going to now get deflated. Where should people be putting their assets right now?
Yeah, so John and I probably have we both have a very bearish, you know, sort of outlook, you know, but I'm an eternal optimist. And so I try to find the silver lining and, but I'm very, very nervous about the state of the economy. I mean, keep in mind, we're only 10 to 15% off of all-time highs. Not down from, you know, since this started, from all-time highs, which just to me is incomprehensible. It makes no sense. I mean, I can tell you why it is. It's because, you know, essentially the government is printing money to buy everything up. I mean, essentially the stock market and the price of things it's imaginary. It's not reflecting reality right now. It's being completely propped up by the Fed and other central banks around the world, which is also scary. Because yeah, the central banks can do that for some period of time, but the more you artificially inflate the market, when the market does eventually have its correction, it's going to be much more brutal when it does happen. Generally, I think there's almost no upside in the stock market right now. I can't see the market going up under the circumstances. So this is a great time to be getting out of the market if you have equities or debt. Be looking at getting out of those markets as efficiently as you can. I think it's a great time to be in cash. I'm personally buying things like gold and silver. I think that, you know, these are interesting times to be, you know, I'm pretty bearish on the markets. I mean, unemployment rates, I mean, this looks a lot like 1929. And I think there's going to be a massive sort of correction. I see there's essentially no upside in the market. So get to cash, get to gold. You know, if you're into cryptocurrency, you know, it's a good time to maybe have some Bitcoin. I wouldn't encourage people to do much in that area unless you really know what you're doing. But if you've never bought any, now's a good time to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin just to understand how it works. You know, a lot of the concept of cryptocurrency was built, you know, for times like these. But you know, U.S. dollars, cash, gold, silver, Bitcoin, you know, cash being king. This is a great time to be in cash. I think that the investment opportunities over the next 6 to 12 months are going to be extraordinary. So if you are blessed with abundance, that you have assets that you can sit on, you know, now's the time to be doing that. Obviously, if you have a small business, you know, get your SBA loans, payroll protection, all that stuff done, because there's a limited window and a limited amount of money. And and they're about to probably reopen those filings on Thursday. And so I really feel for small business operators. You know, make sure that you get your work done this week, like literally drop everything you're doing and make sure you get that filing in place. Because I mean, that's what it's ultimately for. And so definitely encourage people to do that. But I don't think John is wrong. I mean, I do not think the markets reflect the actual state of the economy. I mean, the markets are behaving as if this is like a one-time event, a natural disaster that we're just going to recover from. There's no restarting the economy with the press of a button. It's going to take a very long time. With, you know, it's scary times, and very scary for those people that don't have the money, and very scary for people that don't have the money to invest. Right? For people that don't have money, I mean, people have not been able to work for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and if you're living hand to mouth, that means you don't have food. Like, it's really scary. And if you think about all like historic revolutions, they're pretty much always led at times where poorer people have problems getting their access to food. I mean, even in recent times, Syria, I mean, all of these things are typically driven by food, and it's scary. You can go check. One of the things that I'm doing to assist with that here in Puerto Rico is you can go to feedpuertorico.org. And so the feedpuertorico.org campaign is one of the things that we're doing to buy food from farmers and delivering it to people in need. And so we're doing that in partnership with the Puerto Rico Food Bank. They're matching all donations. And so if you do have abundance, and if you do care about Puerto Rico and the people that are in need, we definitely would love anyone's support. And we'll be launching another campaign this week, probably related to the healthcare system. This is not, again, my background. I spent now a few years, learning how to do, how to actively manage foundations and sort of philanthropic work, and getting better at it day by day. But really proud of the work that the team at Integro are doing, and that's where the feedpuertorico.org campaign is running from.
Very cool, and it's definitely important to support the farms in Puerto Rico in this time, because a lot of our food is coming from overseas. It's getting imported. So if those imports stop, we need local food distribution and creation. So we need these farms here in the island. And it doesn't make any sense really that we're importing food when we have such a rich agriculture here. So not only is this good for in the short term, I think this is great for sustainability long term on the island.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in the concept of each and every one of us trying to become resilient, self-reliant, and once you start moving up the resiliency curve, then you move on to sustainability and eventually regeneration. But Puerto Rico imports 85% of its food. That's really scary, considering that we have 4 growing seasons, infinite fresh water, soil that's unspoiled for from, call it, the Monsantos and things of the world. And when you take a look at one of our neighboring islands, look at the Dominican Republic. They're a net exporter of food, meaning they make more food than they consume. And Puerto Rico is the complete opposite of that. We import 85% of the food we consume. And you are what you eat. So from a resiliency perspective, it's very important. From a health perspective, it's very important. And so, one of my main focuses is, trying to find more and more ways to support local farmers and local agriculture. And, I encourage, everybody to do what they can in that regard. And that's why we're focused on getting money into the hands of farmers.
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced it myself. I was in Peru and for over a month, and I lost weight. Eating all this natural food. I was like, oh wow, this is real food. This is what actual avocado tastes like. And the ceviche, it's like the fish that they just caught, and everything was so fresh. And I was blown away. And then I got back to Puerto Rico. It's like, oh wait, all of this, if you start looking at the labels and you're paying attention, a lot of it's made in America. So what I try to do, just doing my little part at least, is I try to buy from Puerto Rico. Look at the label. Hey, are these eggs from Puerto Rico? Okay, great. I'll pay 50 cents more to get local eggs and things of that nature, because it doesn't make sense that we're getting stuff from the United States. It really doesn't.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things. Everyone, and it's not just for Puerto Rico. This is worldwide. Buy local. You're not, burning fossil fuels to have it shipped to you. You're supporting the local resilience of the community in which you live, and everybody's going to be healthier as a result of that. When you buy from a local Puerto Rican business, that money stays in Puerto Rico. When you buy from a non-Puerto Rican business, that money leaves Puerto Rico. And so, if you really want to upgrade your local economy, if you want to upgrade your local environment, supporting local business is one of the greatest things you can do. And that's one of the really sad things when you drive around Puerto Rican streets. You don't see a lot of big Puerto Rican brands. You see mostly foreign brands that have been franchised and brought to Puerto Rico. There's not enough.
Starbucks.
Yeah, I don't see enough Puerto Rican brands, and that's what's sad. We need to, and because what that means though is that the people that live here are not supporting, the Puerto Rican startups and the Puerto Rican businesses. We need to be more and more and more supporting local business. And I mean, that one move alone, if Puerto Rico really started to change its buying habits, right? And started voting with its wallets and supporting local business. I mean, that may be the biggest lever of anything we could do to really right the Puerto Rican economy, improve the health of the Puerto Rican people, job creation, everything else. Buy Puerto Rican, and this is not limited to Puerto Rico. This is true all over the world. Support your fellow, support thy neighbor, buy from their businesses. And that's not to say that you have to buy everything local. If there's specialty products and things that you want from some foreign place, great. But when you're buying your basic essentials, try to, it's like your eggs, buy Puerto Rican eggs, literally, every time you do that, that puts more money in the hands of the people that are, running those local businesses, which allow them to hire more people, increase production. And it's really simple math. And the impact of it's very, very real.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about tourism real quick. I know we're running low on time, but I definitely don't want to step over tourism. So Hurricane Maria devastated the tourism industry. This is way worse. The planes are not flying. Tourism globally is getting devastated. But for Puerto Rico, an economy that is heavily reliant on that industry, what advice do you have for people in the tourism industry? I have a lot of friends who are tour guides, who are in the service industry, hospitality. What's the future of tourism here in Puerto Rico?
Well, sadly for the whole world, but Puerto Rico in this case as well, tourism is going to be off. This next year is probably going to be wrecked. Right now, obviously, tourism's at a standstill. But even once quarantine ends, I imagine that, the good news is that we're entering the summer months right now, which Puerto Rico, this is our off season anyway. The one good thing about Puerto Rico's season relative to the timing is that hopefully by winter and next winter that, tourism starts to pick up again, that, travel comes in, because I don't think that we're going to see anything all summer and probably into the fall, which is our hurricane season. So hopefully, tourism starts to come back by the next season. But I think it's still going to be off next year. I think, for a lot of reasons, people are just going to have a lot less money, because of all of this. And I think people aren't scheduling vacations right now. And I think that people are going to be less likely to travel. And so I think we're going to see next year is probably going to be off. Again, this is not my area of expertise. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough. Yeah, if you have any of these businesses, stop everything you're doing and focus on your SBA docs, get your loan, borrow that money. These government programs are in place, and they might be the difference between you going, staying in business and going out of business. And so if you're, a business based here, get that paperwork completed like now. You don't know if there's going to be another wave of loans given out.
How can they evolve to adapt in this type of environment?
Oh, it's, the beautiful thing is that human beings by nature we're very adaptable. Sadly right now, it basically means you probably have to lay off, most of your people, other than through these loans of keeping, you have to keep people on payroll for 2.5 months. But it's scaled down, and it's a marathon, and it's not about like growing right now. It's about staying alive. It's really just about finding a way to tread water as long as you can, so that you stay in the game. And anything you can do to stay afloat is what you need to be doing right now, and understand that it's going to be a while before the economy recovers. And sadly, it means laying off people that you don't want to lay off, and that's being a business owner is a tough job. It normally means that you're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The buck stops with you. And it also means having to make really difficult decisions sometimes, doing things that make you really, unhappy. It doesn't feel good. As a business owner, you're glad to be, supporting, people and their families. And it's a very painful thing to have to lay off good people that are being laid off, not because of they're not doing their job well or anything that's their fault, just circumstances requiring it. Very, very difficult times for business owners. very difficult times for government officials too. I mean, it's very similar to, sort of war times. There's no right decisions. There's no good decisions. Whatever you choose, it's like your options are bad and bad and bad. And you're trying to pick the lesser of the evils. And very, very, very difficult time, for people that have to make decisions that affect the lives of others.
Definitely. What advice would you have for young people, maybe graduating college, graduating high school? They're looking for a career, they're looking for an industry to get into in this economy. They have, their whole life ahead of them, unlimited opportunities ahead of them. What advice do you have for young people maybe joining the job market?
Well, I mean, the world of the job market is changing radically right now. When your parents or grandparents were around, people would join a company and might work at that company for their entire lives. They might retire with that company and end up in a pension program. Those days have essentially come to an end. And, we're moving into this concept of where you're going to change careers, you're going to change jobs likely many times over the course of your life. And so think about your job not only as something that gets you paid, but almost like you're continuing to go to school, that you're basically going to be learning for the rest of your life. And so choose wisely the things that you want to learn. Understand that it's not just a job to get paid, you're also developing a skill. And where do you want to invest your time and energy into what skills that you want to develop? Definitely, I would be taking a look at things like the gig economy. It may not be the best paying things, but the flexibility of being able to work for organizations like Uber is really amazing because you get to work your own hours, which means you can have a primary job, which might be an entrepreneurial endeavor. It might be a continued, pursuit of higher education. It might be, pursuing the arts, but you get to work hours that you want. There's all these sorts of new jobs that you get to work your hours, or you can work from home. And so these are the things that I would generally encourage people to do. Because one, it's not going to give you this false sense of security that you have a job, that, you're kind of responsible for you. And it will be very empowering in that regard, because you really get to still control your time and choose when you work and what you do. And it allows you to do other things. I mean, if you work in a restaurant, normally you have very fixed hours and you have to work those hours and you don't get to pick your hours, and if you want to change it, you have to ask someone to fill in for you and all these sorts of things. And that can be very limiting in terms of the other things that you can do with your time. And so definitely I would be looking at sort of the gig economy and, thinking about, having long-term plans. Where do you want to be, in 12 months, in 5 years, in 10 years, and make sure that you're thinking about your long game as well as your short game. What are you doing to put points on the board, in the short term, but ultimately, what is the big game? What is the big goal? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And the decisions you make today will have a large impact on determining where you're going to end. It's like, you can, if you're going 1 inch left or 1 inch right, and you walk for miles, it's going to put you in a very, very different place, very, very different place. And so you really want to be thinking about in what direction are you going, and to be really thoughtful, in that regard, because it makes a huge difference over time.
What type of skills should they be learning for the new economy? And with online education, I feel like everyone's home right now. They're trying to learn new skills. What type of skills should people be learning in the new economy? And we actually have a question from the audience, which is related. What do you guys think of education here in Puerto Rico? Knowing that most of the public schools have now closed, how do we educate, and how can we better educate, fix our educational system?
Well, I mean, most of the Ivy League universities have some or a large amount of programming that's online for free today. This is a little bit of a bold statement, and I'm sorry if I cause anyone offense, but in general, I think going to college is, unless you're getting a very specific degree that permits you to work in a very specific industry, you kind of don't need to do it.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly. You really don't need it today. You don't need the degree. You can go learn, and basically you can go to a better school for free. And not be embroiled with that. You can do it on hours at your pace. In a lot of ways, you're better off just kind of joining the workforce and kind of self-educating. unless there's a very specific career that you want, or going to a trade school. I mean, one of the most important things you can, learn today is a new language, and that language being programming, computer language, computer code. Learning how to write code, certainly for anyone in Puerto Rico, you can be a programmer and work, anywhere in the world from Puerto Rico. And, the amount of jobs available for people that have learned how to code are, if you want, it's what are the skills that are going to be, in demand, and being able to read and write in computer language is probably one of the most valuable things that anyone can learn. And again, you don't have to go to school for that. You can go join a trade program, a trade school. You can learn things online. The benefit of a traditional educational system is probably more the social benefits and, probably the parties. At this point, you can learn anything you want in a non-structured fashion. And so unless you really need structure, or you're looking to goof off for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I would definitely be considering the cheaper, free alternatives from likely even better schools.
Very cool. I know we're running low on time. Someone's asking about ID 2020. Do you know what this is?
Is this the Real ID program?
Yeah, it looks like the Real ID program.
Yeah, so this puts a star on your driver's license. The most, I think, important thing to be aware of in the concept, if I'm following the correct question, is the forced vaccinations. To be able to get a driver's license, which will determine your ability to get a passport and to open a bank account, you're going to have to take something like 72 different vaccines as an adult. And so this is the thing: is we're in an election year. I don't have the right answer in terms of vaccine implications, but it's definitely something that we as Americans should be aware of. Depending upon your view of vaccines, right now we've made it basically a requirement of young people to be vaccinated, kids, but that's about to become a requirement for all adults. And do you want 72 vaccines to be able to get a driver's license, to be able to travel, to be able to open a bank account? That's about to become a requirement, I believe, in October. Every adult in America, to get the new Real ID, is going to have 72 like vaccines.
Wow, that's crazy.
Meaning, if this is something that
already passed in law.
Yes. So if that's something that you care about, it's something that you should definitely rock the vote. This is if you care about it. And from a freedom perspective, it's a big deal. The minute you don't get to decide what's put in your body, what's injected inside of you, with that, a lot of freedom, can go. And I'm not saying that, vaccines are bad either. Vaccines right now, people are pretty focused on getting a COVID vaccine. I don't know what to believe, right? I don't know what's right. But the idea of being forced to take vaccines kind of is scary. And if you're not interested in getting those vaccines, it's very important that you get your new ID by September. When this because to get the ID, remember your ID lasts 10 years. So if you get your new ID by September, you'll have 10 years to be able to get your new ID before you're forced to take those vaccines. If your ID expires in December, you're going to be forced to get 72 vaccines. So one, if you don't want those vaccines, make sure that you get your IDs updated when the quarantine is over, before that is a requirement for you. And if you really feel strongly about this, it should be a major issue in terms of how you vote this year.
Wow, that's incredible. Brock, advice for young people?
You are our future. So more than anything, believe in yourself, hope. You can do just about anything. So really decide, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? How do you want to contribute? Where do you want to help? And give it some real thought, because you are our future. And don't succumb to fear. Believe in yourselves, and choose wisely, and discerning. You are the company you keep. Surround yourself by the best people, the most positive people, the people that are trying to do good things. Because the more you surround yourself with those types of people, the more you will become those types of people. And so make good decisions, be discerning, do good things. Thank you.
Okay, last question. What does disrupt mean to you? And then we'll say goodbye.
Disrupt is free thinking. It's challenging and questioning the status quo and saying that just because something is doesn't mean it always has to be that way. To disrupt is to question the status quo and to believe that you can do things better because you can, and the world depends on it. The status quo is not going to get us where we need to go. And so we need to really be questioning everything, and we need to figure out ways to improve on most things. And so, be disruptive, do great things. We can make this place we can build a better world. We can create a new earth. So, just choose wisely, know your why, build your foundation, and live your best life, be your best self,
Brock, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's always a pleasure. If people want to connect with you on social media, they want to learn more about your projects, where do we want to send them to? What website?
You can find me on Twitter, just at Brock Pierce, my full name, one word. You can find me on Instagram. Make sure you find the verified mark, because there's a lot of impersonators that will try and scam you.
A couple of robots. I think they're trying to ask me to sell Bitcoin.
Well, right? I guess I'm a high profile enough person, and people associate me with making money. And so there's all these scammers that create fake Brocks, and then they promise you investment schemes to basically rip you off. I will never ask you for money. I will never ask you to invest in anything. That is not my nature. So, look for the verified thing on Instagram. It's Brock J. Pierce there. You can find my YouTube channel. It's just Brock. It's Brock Pierce or Brock Pierce Official, something like that. I'm trying to put out more and more content and share my thoughts with you. You can also, I think, go to brockpierce.io, which is my website that's got some information there. I'm trying to upgrade all of these things so that I can do a better job of, spreading the good word. And sharing these messages with the hopes that it positively impacts someone.